Welcome to my teaching titled Christians Under the Thumb of Money. This really is more of a personal testimony about me. I've been in the financial industry for now over 16 years, and I used to really think differently about money, especially when I first got into the industry. I have come to realize that God has everything to do with the blessings we receive on a daily basis. And I've learned a lot about not just the history of money, but what it truly is and how Satan uses it to control a vast majority of the population. And so I want to teach you a few different things today that I personally can tell you work. And not only that, they're very biblical, but I also have some common sense stuff in here too. So, how to overcome spiritual forces at work that are keeping you under their thumb with money. Let's begin. The first step is really to stop and look at your life and analyze the reality of where you are standing right now. And if any of these describes you, then you may need to address some areas in your life, especially in your walk with the Lord. Are you living paycheck to paycheck? There's never anything left over at the end of when you pay your bills. That, to me, is a form of slavery almost, where you basically just work, pay bills, and that's it. You're in this routine. You're on the hamster wheel. How about most of your paycheck goes to debt payments? I've been there. I know what it's like to have substantial debt and to be paying thousands of dollars a month in just interest. If you are in this position, you need to change something, and very quickly. How about financial emergencies? One after another, constantly being sick, things constantly breaking down, always costing more than what you think. This right here is a sure sign that something is going on that you need to address. Or when you are just about to break free, maybe you found that great job that pays well and it doesn't work out. Maybe you had a big paycheck that was coming in and other things just ate it up and it didn't go to where you wanted to help you out. Basically, you're just about to have that breakthrough and you're right back where you started. This is a sign that you need to deal with this on a spiritual level. Or how about you have no spare income for giving, for offerings? Notice I don't use the word tithe in there. And there's a very specific reason why. If you are not living a life where you can freely give because you are completely strapped with money and your time, then you know that something needs to change. You know that this is not the life that God has for you. And you are under the thumb of money. Not only that, but this can also harbor resentfulness that you're not able to do the things that you like. Especially in today's world, where we have social media outlets that we see everybody posting the best pictures they possibly have, always of their vacations or family times, or they get to go and do things. And we find ourselves comparing our lives with theirs. And we say, why am I not able to go and do these things? This is a really big trap. And we'll address this a little bit more later. How about just you or your spouse are not very good with money? We'll talk about that too. If you're living a life of what we say rob Peter to pay Paul, with the whole credit card game and with loans, there definitely is an issue here, and you need to address it very quickly. Or let's just say you're flat out having financial problems. Lost a job, no income. A lot of times you need to really examine what's going on in your life and what is your relationship with Jesus. Maybe you need to just realize the Lord is the one who provides all these things, but He cares about you. He loves you, and there isn't any day that goes by that He does not know that you need these things. So maybe these are just a few areas that you need to address. Let's take a look at some of these. Here are a few items to really think about. Maybe they will help change your view or mindset about today's financial system. If you take what we call money, such as dollars, euros, yuan, really they are just what's called currency. They really are only just digits on a screen or pieces of paper. They're not worth anything. In fact, they are technically a debt. And only slaves trade in debt, whereas gentlemen trade in silver and kings trade in gold. You have to ask yourself, are these things that really don't exist really worth stressing out over? Are they really worth treating another human being like garbage to get? Or to have your way controlling them? Are they really worth putting above another person? That's a very important question to ask, because we find this a lot in marriages where couples fight continuously over the finances. Are these digits on a screen really worth your marriage? Or really worth ruining your relationship with your children? And make no mistake, this financial system is designed to keep you in debt and to be a slave. The currency loses value each and every year because the governments and their central banks, which technically are not governments, they are private entities, just continue to create money left, right, and center out of nowhere so that they can keep their control mechanisms alive and in place. Once you really just accept this and say this system is really designed to work against me, it can really help you formulate a strategy to get out of that box, to get out of that cage. But first and foremost, the whole system is not your friend. It is really meant to make you a slave. Think about how easy it is these days to spend $1 million. You could do it in no time at all. Think about how easy it is to spend really any amount of money these days. This world is made to just basically steal money from you. Also, talking about currency being subject to inflation, it does. It absolutely loses value each and every year. The dollar since 1934 has lost almost 99% of its purchasing power. It really is not wise to hang on to large amounts of dollars. You really should be using it one way or another, because those dollars are just losing value each and every single year. Whether that's finding a place that it can gain some amount of interest, or investing it somewhere, or maybe giving it away. You really should make good use of those dollars. Maybe even converting it into a hard type money like gold and silver is not a bad idea if you're just going to sit on it. Maybe making some improvements on real estate that you have, or paying off debts. Just make sure that you're not letting it sit around and rot with the inflation that comes around every single year. Another thing that I run across is that the vast majority, especially of Americans, didn't have a good example about money, and nor did the school system educate them about really how to handle money in school. I can tell you, I went to college for 6 years, and not once did I really learn anything useful about money. I just learned how to create a proposal to go and get a loan from the bank and put myself into debt. I never really learned how to pay off that debt. This is something that we can't remain ignorant of. You really do need to educate yourself about money. There are some great programs out there. Enroll in a program. Ask questions. Find somebody who knows about money. Ask them questions. Learn about it. We also have to watch out for traps in our program society. Things like social media, where you are comparing yourself to other people. Things like trends, the latest and greatest technology, the new gadgets, new computers, new phones. Every time you buy a new phone, it's $1,000 for a few upgrades. Is that really worth it? How about buying a brand new car, which will depreciate tremendously as you drive it off of the lot? We have to really be careful about this, keeping up with our neighbors, per se. This is not what God wants for us. We are not to be pleasers of men. We are to be pleasers of God. And our society is full of these traps. Everything that comes across in commercials, in the whole what I call landfill society or consumerism that we have here, is based on buying new things. And if you can recognize that and your mind can set a protective protocol against trying to be programmed to make impulse buying decisions, then you will do a lot better at making better financial decisions. So let's take a look at what the Bible has to say when it comes to essentially some warnings about money. We read in Matthew 6:24 that no one can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and wealth, which is absolutely true. When you have a large house and you fill that house and you have vehicles and you have material possessions, you have to maintain all of these material possessions. You have to pay taxes on many of these material possessions. You have to keep them up, which takes a lot of time, or you have to pay somebody to keep them up, which even costs more money. In short, your material possessions end up owning you. And if we take a look at Ecclesiastes 5:5, it's better that you should not vow than you should vow and not pay. Something to be said about paying back what you owe. The Lord will bless you for that. Proverbs 21:5 tells us the plans of the diligent lead to an advantage, but those who are hasty will surely come to poverty. People who usually have a lot of financial problems will make very hasty decisions when they buy things. The impulse buy. And our society has really programmed this into us, especially advertising on TV or computer programs. We see this programming that just makes you want to buy something right then and there. Do you ever notice how when you see a fast food commercial, you kind of get hungry all of a sudden, and that burger sounds pretty good? This is part of the manipulation that comes into this programming that they feed all of us to manipulate us to buy things. If we take a look at Proverbs 13:11, wealth obtained by fraud dwindles, but those who gather it by labor increase it. So if you're gaining wealth by something illegal or fraudulent, don't expect God to honor it. But if you are doing something where you are honestly putting in a good day's work and you're earning money, He will increase it. I've seen this happen over and over again, where people are on a fixed type income, but yet somehow they end up getting all their debts paid or all their medical bills paid, or they all of a sudden have a chunk of money left over at the end of the year, and you can't really explain it. God can do these things, and He does do these things. So if you're looking at your salary and you're saying, oh gosh, I need to figure out a way to increase my salary, that's not necessarily true. The Lord will bless all different things in your life, and you'll end up really ahead even with the same salary. It's hard to explain, but you have to have faith. Let's take a look at Deuteronomy 15:6. The Lord your God will bless you as He has promised you. You will lend to many nations and not borrow. You will rule over many nations and they will not rule over you. So you will be the one lending instead of borrowing. Typically, not a very honorable profession, lending, but He's saying that you will be the one that will be able to do this instead of borrowing money from somebody else. You'll be the one in that position. Proverbs 17:18 says, a man lacking in sense pledges, becomes a guarantor in the presence of his neighbor. The Bible warns us not to co-sign on loans. We shouldn't do that. And actually, if we skip down a couple of verses, Proverbs 22:26 and 27 says, do not be among those who give pledges and become a guarantor for debt. The person who doesn't have to put up any collateral or put up anything doesn't have any skin in the game. They don't really care. And they typically might let you end up paying for that debt. You might be the one responsible for it. So it's a good idea. And even I understand with children and everything, you may want to get them going on credit and stuff like that. But if you do it in very small amounts. Don't be doing this on large amounts. Get them started as young as you can in that system, but do it with very small things. If you're going to do it at all. It really tells us not to do it at all. But if you're going to get that going, do it on a very small level first. And in fact, don't ever do it on something large. If we go down to Deuteronomy 15, he's really talking about the Jubilee. Every 7 years they release their loans. And God still does that to His people. He can release these loans. If you are following His ways, if you are listening to His commands and His voice, He can make these loans just be canceled. I've seen it happen time and time again. Proverbs 6:6-8 talks about the ant. But really what's going on is they're saying they're gathering their food in the summer and they're putting it aside for tough times, for the winter. And talking about that we should model what the ant is doing. We should be putting aside something for difficult times, or maybe somebody else we know is going to have difficult times, and we can give that to them and help them get through it. Proverbs 27:12 tells us that a prudent man sees evil and he hides himself. The naive proceed and pay the penalty. Are you following the laws of your government? Are you being prudent about driving too fast, or drinking and driving, or anything that basically can land you a very large fine, or tickets, or anything with the government? This is saying, stay away from evil deeds that are going to get you in trouble. In our day and age, this could very well be something that will make you pay a fine. But really, you will pay the price for doing something evil. And you want to be prudent about this, because this is where you can spend a lot of money from doing something stupid, from doing something you know was wrong in the first place. If you've ever been subject to the discipline of the justice system, they try everything possible to extract money from you and your family. And believe me, it's devastating. If we take a look at Proverbs 27:23, it talks about know well the condition of your flocks, pay attention to your herds. Review your finances. Review your financial situations on a regular basis, and make sure that if you're married, your spouse is involved, talk about it with your spouse. That will keep you, if you're on the same page, you will fight about this stuff tremendously less. Believe me, if you both know where you're at, you feel comfortable with where you're at, and you have that trust, this is not something that you're going to fight about. And if both of you can give your finances over to the Lord, that is even much, much more better. 1 Corinthians 16:2 talks about, on the first day of each week, put aside and save, as he may prosper, that no collections be made when I come. Putting aside some money here for emergencies, for giving, for whatever the Lord has, whatever he tells you to do, maybe paying off any debts, or helping somebody, or giving to a ministry. It's whatever he wants you to do with it. Now we go to Romans 13:8. Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. For he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. Owe nothing to anyone. Favors, money, doing a wrong to them, unforgiveness, handing over your spiritual authority, meaning you're not taking responsibility for something that you did, not taking responsibility for your life. You are handing over your spiritual authority to whatever that thing or that person is. Don't do that. That will not help you out in this world. But really, this verse should be kind of our crown verse here. If you can stay out of debt, owe nothing to anyone, and you can love other people, so you can be generous, you can spread the word, you can spread God's love through them. Right here, this right here is the path to freedom. This right here is the path to getting out of the system. The world has nothing on doing this path right here. And if we also take a look at Proverbs 22:7, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave. I think we can see that day to day. We can feel that definitely. If you're there, you understand what this is saying. This is definitely a warning about being in debt. So let's take a look at what I would call physical steps to take. Well, number one, you need to make a decision. You need to decide whether or not you are going to continue down this path of letting your life revolve around this non-existent money, or around Elohim. Are you going to give this up to him and let him do the heavy lifting and you will obey? Or are you going to keep down this road which has you under the thumb of this entity? The next thing you really need to do is decide what you do and what you do not need. There's a big difference between wanting and needing. Do you absolutely need a brand new vehicle? Do you absolutely need that brand new phone? Do you absolutely need anything that essentially is the latest and greatest and just really kind of contributes to our landfill economy, which thrives on always buying the next new thing? Do you absolutely need it? Is there anything wrong with driving a 5- and 6-year-old vehicle? Is there anything wrong with having a smartphone that may be a few models older but still does what you need it to do? Do you absolutely need that cable TV subscription? Do you absolutely even need that television? I haven't had a television that is hooked up to any kind of news or media or TV networks for probably 8 years now, and I can tell you I don't miss it. It's amazing how much freedom there is in not being connected to this system. Don't be hasty in your decisions when it comes to buying items. Don't just pick it up and throw it in your cart if you don't need it or it's not on your list that you've pre-planned. Say, I'll think about it, and then you can come back and get it the next day if you absolutely need it, or the next time you're in. Don't be hasty when it comes to buying items. Don't be hasty with your decisions. There's nothing wrong with saying, I need to think about it. Go home, talk to your spouse, talk it over, list out the positives and negatives, really come to an informed decision before buying an item. Learning a few skills can save you a lot of money, especially cooking. Eating out with a tip, with a tax, with a drink is really expensive. And not only that, it's very unhealthy. Restaurants don't necessarily care what is going into your body so long as that it tastes good and that you are paying for it. Also, maintenance. Maintenance on your house, maintenance on your car. These things are very important to be able to do on your own. You'll save a tremendous amount of money on being able to maintain the things that you have yourself. Mechanics and being able to just fix things. Can you do your own drywall repair? Can you do some of your own plumbing repairs? Can you change your oil? Can you change out shocks or struts on your vehicle? Can you work on your vehicle a little bit? These types of things can save you a tremendous amount of money if you have the skills and can learn the skills to do some of these yourself. The next one is get rid of debt. Sometimes this can be really hard. Some of the easier debts to get rid of are credit cards. If you go to some of these debt consolidation places, and basically how that works is that you essentially kind of default on some of these credit cards, so your credit score doesn't end up being looking too good for a little while, but they go in and they negotiate down some of the debt, get rid of some of the interest and things like that, and then essentially you set up a payment program that is much more affordable, can give you some breathing room, and you can work on getting rid of this debt. It's not that you don't want to pay it. It's, why should I have a 22 or 28% interest rate on this debt? That's just ridiculous. Also, focus on getting rid of one at a time. Dave Ramsey, I believe, teaches that in his Financial Peace University, which is a pretty good program, by the way, for financial education. Working on paying down debts, or what they call snowballing. Get your first one, your smallest one, out of the way first, and you kind of get the feeling of what it's like to get that paid off, and then work on the larger ones and the larger ones and the larger ones as you go along, and you'll see them snowball. As our Bible verses before said, put aside some funds for various purposes when you can start to afford this. You'll have great freedom in having 2 years emergency fund or 5-year emergency fund. Something happens financially to you, say a loss of a job or something like that, a medical condition, and you have that money to fall back on, that really eliminates a lot of fear in your life and can really put you in a much better place. But also take a good look at what you're doing to make money. Does it please the Lord? Does what you're doing to make money, is it legal? Is it right? Is it something that God would say, hey, this is a good profession? That could be a very difficult thing. I would really struggle. I really struggle with the financial industry, and in fact, I kind of make it a point that I really don't trust any investment company at all. And I guess I kind of say I try to protect clients from really falling into the scams that the investment industry offers, which is a tremendous amount of them. I try to wake them up as to here's what this system really is, and how do you prepare for that? How do you kind of maneuver around it? But you really should take a good look at it, and how can you make it something that pleases the Lord, which can be very difficult at times. And if you really feel guilty about it, ask Him to help you find something else. Don't feel guilty. Guilt is not from Jesus. All right, there's being convicted of sin through the Holy Spirit and feeling guilty are two different things. Don't co-sign a loan for anyone, including and especially your children. Like I said earlier, if you're going to do this, start out, do it small. Don't do it on large things. Do it small, because this will ruin your relationship with your children if they don't pay up, and it falls back on you and you have to pay it. When you walk into a situation like that with family or children, you better expect to just be able to pay that bill. And how are you going to feel when you're stuck paying it? You need to really think about that. Because it's going to go on your credit, it's going to go on your reputation, it's going to come out of your finances. And are you willing to take that risk? Because it probably isn't worth it. A, number one, you ruin your relationship with them. B, it ruins your financial life, it ruins your time and energy, and it ruins theirs as well, and it can send both of you down a very bad and dark path. It probably is just not a good idea to do it, period. Do a regular checkup on your finances. Make sure your spouse is involved. I talked about that one a little bit earlier. And planning ahead is better than no plan at all. I try to do this with almost anything. If I'm going to the grocery store or I'm going to make some kind of purchase, research it, see if I'm getting a decent price, try to plan ahead on everything, plan ahead with what do the rest of the finances look like. And it's better than just going and buying things. The Lord knows our path. We really shouldn't focus on the future too much. I mean, we could focus on today, but it's better than nothing. It's better than being hasty. It's good to set aside for the future. Even the Bible does tell us that. So let's look at a few other examples here of things that can really affect you financially. The first one is really powerful. It's really strong because this is so applicable today. Don't compare yourself to other people. Galatians 1:10 distinctly tells us, are we living to serve God and to please God, or are we living to serve and please man? When you have all these people on social media out there posting their best pictures, they're all airbrushed, they're all edited, they all look fantastic. I'm on this great diet, I go to this great gym, I'm working out, or I travel all the time. These are all the cool places that I travel to. These are all the really expensive and trendy restaurants and bars that I go to and consume. This is a trap. This is because then you get that lying voice in your head that says, "Oh, wow, I don't get to do this. I should be able to do this, and I want to do this, or why aren't you doing this as well?" This is what successful people do. This is a lie, folks. Don't compare yourself to these people. Who cares what these people are doing? You stay in your lane. You focus on your path. You will be greatly rewarded for it, and you don't want to live their empty life. You can live a life of fullness through the Lord and more freedom than any of these people will ever experience, even if you know them very well. You also have to understand society is never going to accept you as a true believer when you're living in Jesus. It rejected him first. It will reject you as well. Don't feed into it. Don't feed into these fads. Don't feed into these lies. They'll never accept you. They're never going to say, "Wow, you are just amazing." Don't even go there. It's not worth it. You're throwing your pearls to the swine. We are called to be different. We are called to not be of this world. And if you want to reference that, look at 1 John 2:15 and 17, Romans 12:12, and James 4:4. Another thing, mostly in regarding taxes and the government, give Caesar what is Caesar's. Now I know that there's different contexts here in this verse, but I'm going to talk about just essentially the law-abiding part of Mark 12:17. If you legally owe the taxes, pay them, and pay them as soon as you can. Why? Because you don't want to be subject to the disciplinary actions of the government. They will extract as much out of you as they possibly can. Remember, God did put these entities in order. And you need to have faith that even though this thing is taking money from you, that the Lord will provide it somewhere else, some way or another. Keep on top of your tax return and taxes, and don't be paying unnecessary penalties. Get things filed as early as possible. Work with an accountant or a CPA if you have to. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with people to talk about their finances, and they have not filed tax returns, and that ends up being a really big mess that they have to go and fix. But they just haven't filed tax returns. The IRS starts garnishing accounts. They start just making up numbers. It's a very unpleasant situation. It's like I said, being subject to discipline of the government, they will do everything they can to just take everything from you. Do not be in this position. The Lord can protect you from this. He can definitely keep you from having to deal with anything like this. How many times have we seen that relative or friend who is incredibly stingy? They never ever pay full price for anything, and if they do, they're mad about it, and they throw a fit, and or they just really, money is really their god. It's their idol. I have relatives like this, and they're pretty lonely people. Look at it this way: if you use a service, pay what is owed. I know things are expensive out there, and there's a lot of times you feel like you overpaid, but don't let that steal your peace. Don't let that become a fear of, I look like a fool, or I got ripped off, or I got taken on this, and I'm going to get back at it or whatever. You know what? It's okay. You need to have faith that if this person stole from you, and God will judge that he will, one way or the other, bring it back to you. Don't put yourself in a place where people can steal your joy. People can steal your peace of mind. If you borrowed the money, pay it back. Especially if this is a person-to-person deal where you have a relationship with that person. Now, if they forgive you of the debt, that's a different story. But if you borrowed it, pay it back. Be aware of never being satisfied. Be content with where you're at and with what you have. Philippians 4:11 through 13 talks about this. Don't be that person that always wants the latest and greatest thing. That's a fear of man. That's a fear of what I'm going to look like to the rest of the herd, to the rest of the crowd. It's a different story, obviously, if you need it for work or it's something that you absolutely have to make your living. But always just like wanting the newest phone or the newest vehicle or the newest style or the newest clothes or anything like that. There's, you're never being satisfied. You're never being content. Who are you trying to impress? Is it God? And if the answer to that really is no, then you don't need it. Are you trying to be up on all the latest movies and all the latest trends and everything like that? Is that really important? Just always be aware. If you're not content with where you're at, there's something wrong, and that is really a huge issue. As far as I'll talk about some of that a little bit later here when I get to the spiritual side of this. But that may be what's really holding you back. Another thing to really think about is, do you really need that expensive pet in your financial condition? Pet ownership is wonderful. They're a part of your family. Don't get me wrong about that. But if you're in a place where you're already in debt and you're kind of depressed and you're thinking to yourself, man, I really would love to have a big dog just as a companion, or maybe you're newly married and you're still struggling financially and you're thinking maybe this large pet is going to be something that'll make you guys a little bit happy. Think about that a little bit first. And I'm all for rescuing pets and everything like that, but you also want to be able to not only provide for them a good life, but you also have to not put a huge burden on yourself too. Large pet ownership is very expensive, and there's a few articles going around out there that says the average cost of a large dog over a span of about 11 to 13 years is between $25,000 and $28,000, and that's a pretty good chunk of money. And having two dogs, almost, it doesn't quite, but almost doubles that. So it's like, can you realistically afford that where you're at? Not to discourage, but make sure you're secure more financially first before you go and bring in this pet into your family. You're going to do both of you a lot more of a favor. You're going to enjoy it a lot more and have less stress and less problems if you're in a better place financially. Not only that, but let's talk about addictions. The addictions are expensive. 1 John 2:16 will tell us a little bit about this. But remember, addictions are an idol. Typically, when we run to an addiction, we're feeling unloved. We're trying to fill the void of being unloved. And unfortunately, the Lord does not honor the time and money that we spend on these. And in fact, they can do a lot of damage to us. Think of drinking, how expensive that can be. Smoking cigarettes, coffee, a $5 latte 3 times a day can be horrendously expensive. Food addictions, any of these types of addictions where you're spending money. Gambling, good Lord, that's a terrible one. Where you're spending money is just going to pull that out of you. It's not just taking away your money, it's taking away your time and energy. It's probably one of the worst places you could spend. But give these addictions up to the Lord. Get into a group of people who have overcome these and see how they did it. But give these up, because these are very devastating for you.